The White House has made its first comment since President Trump sparked a row by saying that NATO troops had stayed a little off the front lines during the war in Afghanistan. Britain's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said the words were insulting and appalling. Prince Harry, who served in Afghanistan, has called for the sacrifices of NATO soldiers to be spoken about truthfully and with respect. While the White House's Deputy Press Secretary said that Mr. Trump was right to have stressed that America's contribution to NATO dwarfed those of other countries. There was no direct response to the outrage caused. Lee Milner reports.
From the Times to the Express, newspapers across the nation led this morning with a single demand: an apology from President Trump. It comes after his comments sparked outrage and offence, belittling the sacrifices made by NATO and British troops during the Afghanistan war in 2006.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we are talking about something very serious that is happening right now with Donald Trump. Things are getting very tense. Recently there was a lot of talk because of some comments he made about NATO troops. He suggested they didn't do enough during the war in Afghanistan. This upset a lot of people, especially in the UK. But there is a much bigger story happening behind the scenes. Right now, legal experts are looking at the actual numbers of the court cases against him. When you add everything up, the amount of time he could spend in prison is massive. For a man who is 79 years old, even a medium-sized sentence could mean he never goes home. This is why everyone is paying so much attention to these trials. It is not just about a fine or a slap on the wrist anymore. We are talking about the possibility of him spending the rest of his life behind bars. This matters because it changes why he is doing what he is doing. It explains why he is so focused on staying in power. In this video, we are going to break down the actual years he is facing and what is currently keeping him out of a cell.
We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back.
The conflict was triggered after the US asked for NATO allies to help battle the Taliban in the aftermath of the September the 11th attacks. Robert Dicketts from Kent lost his only child, Oliver, who was based in Helmand, the scene of the heaviest fighting. He was one of the 457 British service personnel who died.
President Trump needs to get his history right. His knowledge of history is completely farcical.
Donald Trump is facing a very real fear right now. It is not just about politics or losing an election. It is about the very real possibility of going to prison for the rest of his life. If you look at all the charges against him in both federal and state courts, the total time he could be sentenced to is over 600 years. Of course, no one actually lives that long. But the fact that the numbers are that high shows how serious the situation is. Even if he only gets a fraction of that time, it would still be a life sentence for someone his age. For example, the case involving classified documents is very dangerous for him. Legal experts say that for this case alone, he could realistically face 17 to 22 years in federal prison. When you are 79 years old, 20 years is essentially the rest of your life. This is why he seems so worried. The bravado he shows in public might be covering up how scared he actually is. There was a recent controversy involving NATO. Trump claimed that NATO troops stayed away from the front lines during the war in Afghanistan. This caused a lot of anger. Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, called these words insulting. Prince Harry also spoke up. He served in Afghanistan and said we must speak about the sacrifices of soldiers with respect. Robert Dicketts, a father who lost his son Oliver in the fighting in Afghanistan, said Trump needs to get his history right. He called Trump's knowledge of the war completely wrong. Even with all this anger and the legal cases, Trump is not in prison today. This is because he has special protections. Right now, he is the President of the United States. The Department of Justice has a rule that says you cannot charge a sitting president with a crime. This acts like a shield. Also, the Supreme Court ruled that presidents have some immunity for things they do as part of their official job. This makes it much harder for prosecutors to move forward. But these protections are not permanent. They only last as long as he is in office or has political power. If he loses that power, the shield goes away. Former Special Counsel Jack Smith has been very clear about this. He told Congress that he has enough evidence to prove Trump committed crimes. He said that if Trump were anyone else, he would already be in prison. Smith explained that the cases involve very sensitive secrets and efforts to hide evidence. This is the kind of behavior that usually leads to a long time behind bars. Let's look at the specific cases. In the classified documents case, Trump is accused of keeping secret papers and trying to hide them from the government. He is also accused of telling people to delete security footage. Obstruction of justice like this can carry a 20-year sentence. Then there is the election interference case. This is about the efforts to change the results of the 2020 election. Experts think this could add another 5 to 9 years to his sentence. Then we have the state cases. In Georgia, Trump faces charges for trying to flip the election results there. This includes a famous phone call where he asked a state official to find more votes. Georgia has a law called RICO that is used to fight organized crime groups. If he is convicted under this law, he could face another 20 years. A president cannot pardon himself for state crimes, so even if he uses his power to clear his federal record, the Georgia case would still be there. In New York, Trump has already been convicted of 34 felonies. These were related to falsifying business records to cover up payments. Juan Merchan, the judge in that case, decided not to give Trump any jail time or fines. He gave him an unconditional discharge. This means Trump is a convicted felon, but he didn't have to go to prison for it. Many people think this shows a double standard. They believe an ordinary person would have been sent to jail for the same thing. But because Trump was the president-elect at the time, the judge was more lenient. When you put all of this together, the numbers are clear. The documents case could be 20 years. The election case could be 9 years. The Georgia case could be 20 years. That is nearly 50 years of potential prison time. For a man in his late 70 seconds, this is a total catastrophe. Trump knows this. He knows his freedom depends on staying in power. He needs to keep Republicans in control of Congress so they can protect him. He needs to keep his supporters on his side so politicians are afraid to go after him. He also uses a strategy of delay. His lawyers file many motions and appeals to slow everything down. They are trying to run out the clock on the statute of limitations. If he can stay in office until 2029, some of these charges might expire. Jack Smith has made it clear that the evidence is strong. He isn't just guessing. He told Congress that the evidence shows Trump actually did these things. He said it's not about politics, it's about the law. If the political shield ever drops, the legal system is ready to move. This is why Trump is fighting so hard. He isn't just fighting for a job, he is fighting for his life. If he loses his political protection, he faces a future where he could die in a prison cell. That is a reality that keeps him up at night. When we look at everything happening with Donald Trump, it is easy to get lost in the numbers. But what does this actually mean? It means that the United States is in a very strange spot. Usually the law is supposed to be the same for everyone. But right now we are seeing that having political power can act like a suit of armor. Trump is facing enough charges to put a normal person away for several lifetimes, yet he is walking free. This situation shows us a double standard. In the New York case, the judge basically admitted that a regular person would have gone to jail, but because Trump is a leader of a major party, the system treated him differently. This tells us that the courts are a bit afraid of the chaos that might happen if they put a former president in a cell. This is a very big deal. It suggests that if you are powerful enough, the rules change for you. We can compare this to other times in history. Think back to Richard Nixon. He was involved in the Watergate scandal. He probably would have gone to prison, but the next president, Gerald Ford, gave him a pardon. Ford did this because he wanted the country to move on and stop being so divided. We see a similar thing happening now. Some people think prosecuting Trump is too divisive, but the difference is that Nixon stepped down and went away. Trump is still in the middle of the fight. In other countries, we see different things. In some places, former leaders are sent to prison all the time. In South Korea, several former presidents have gone to jail for corruption. It shows that their system is willing to punish the most powerful people. In America, we haven't really done that before. It makes America look more like a country where the leader is above the law, which is something many Americans are not used to. Another thing to look at is how Trump uses delay as a weapon. This is a very common tactic for people with a lot of money. If you can keep a case going for years, witnesses forget things, people get tired of the story, and sometimes the time limit to charge someone runs out. Most people can't afford to do this. They have to go to trial and get it over with. Trump's ability to slow down the system is a huge advantage that most citizens don't have. The analysis here is simple. Trump's legal strategy is actually a political strategy. He isn't just trying to prove he is innocent in court. He is trying to stay in power so the court cases can't touch him. This turns the justice system into a game of who has the most power. If he wins the power game, the legal game doesn't matter. If he loses the power game, the legal game will likely end with him in prison. So what happens next? The future looks very bumpy. In the short term, Trump will likely continue to use his power to block any federal cases. As long as he is in the White House, the Department of Justice will not move against him. This means the federal cases are essentially on ice for the next few years. He will also try to appoint people who are loyal to him to make sure no new investigations start. However, the state cases are different. The case in Georgia is a big wild card. A president cannot stop a state prosecution easily, and he cannot pardon himself for it. If that case goes to trial and he is convicted, it could create a massive crisis. We might see a situation where a sitting president is sentenced to prison by a state court. No one knows exactly how that would work. It would likely end up in the Supreme Court, and it would be a legal mess for years. In the long term, the biggest risk for Trump is 2028. If he leaves office then, and a different party takes over, the new government could restart all the federal cases. By then, he will be in his 80 seconds. If he is convicted, then he would almost certainly spend his final years in prison. This is why the 2028 election is already so important, even though it is years away. There is also the consequence for the country. If Trump avoids prison because of his power, many people will lose faith in the justice system. They will feel like there is one set of rules for the rich and powerful and another for everyone else. On the other hand, if he is sent to prison, his supporters might feel like it is a political attack. Either way, the country stays divided. Based on history and how these patterns work, we can expect Trump to fight for every inch of power he can get. He might even try to find ways to stay in office longer than the law allows, or try to pick his own successor to keep the protection going. He is in a survival mode. When someone is fighting to stay out of prison, they will do almost anything. The most likely outcome is a long, drawn-out battle in the courts that lasts for the rest of Trump's life. We will see more appeals, more delays, and more political fighting. The life in prison threat will always be hanging over him, acting as the main reason he stays in the political arena. He can't afford to retire because retirement could mean a jail cell.